Hi everybody, okay, welcome back. We are looking today at Jeremy Duff, Elements of New Testament Greek. We're looking at section 3.5, the pronoun autos. What I want to do today is just a quick outline, reminder of what Duff's saying here and about what pronouns are. And also I want to help you with a couple of tricky things. One referring to how to translate the different genders of the pronoun autos, and then also dealing with the possessive form, the genitive form, because both of those can sometimes cause students a little bit of confusion, but once you see through the issues, they're really quite straightforward. So first up, well, you know what a pronoun is. A pronoun is a word that stands in the place of a noun. So the personal pronoun autos is the third person pronoun. So that stands in the place of a noun when you're referring to something else. Not you, that's the first person, not the person you're talking to, that's the second person, but something else. So instead of talking about, say, John did something, I might say he, the pronoun, did something. Or if I say I saw Nicole, instead of saying Nicole, I might say I saw her. Or I'm looking at the camera while I'm looking at it instead of the camera. So it, her, he, him, and of course the possessive forms his, their, and so on and so forth. So the third person pronoun refers to other things. Now, you've got the declension down here, and it's, as Duff says, it's very simple. The masculine form follows the same form as nouns like logos, the feminine, the same form as nouns like archer, and the neuter, the same form as words like ergon, with the exception that in the masculine and in the neuter, in the nominative and accusative singular in the neuter, the ending is slightly different from ergon. Instead of going auton, auton, autu, auto, it goes auto, auto, autu, auto. In other words, it follows the ending for the article, the neuter article, which, as you also remember, goes to, to in the singular of the neuter. So in effect, it's mostly like the nouns, but the neuter, nominative and accusative singular is like the article instead. Now you'll see that pattern elsewhere. You know the article, you know the nouns by now, and so once you've done that, you've got it in your mind and you can get a clear picture of how to decline the pronoun. Now then, let's just deal with a couple of slightly tricky things. The first relating to the genders and how to translate the masculine and the feminine and the neuter genders. What Duff has done here in giving you in the table on page 39, he's given you a translation of the masculine form as he, him, his, to him, and so on. The feminine as she, her, and then the neuter as it, its, and so on. And that's reasonable as a first stab at translation. But you've got to remember something all the time when dealing with gender in any language. Grammatical gender is not the same as biological sex or biological gender. So something can be grammatically feminine, say, but be neuter in the way that we speak about it. So when you see something like something that's referred to by a feminine pronoun, just to take that example, you'd need to make sure that you didn't automatically assume that you should translate the pronoun as she or her. Same with the masculine. The masculine pronoun could theoretically refer to something that's masculine, like, I don't know, bread. Well, bread is artos, that's masculine, but you'd never refer to bread if you were using the pronoun as he, would you? It would be it. And therefore, if you see a pronoun that's masculine, you're thinking he or possibly it. If you see a pronoun that's feminine, you're thinking she or possibly it. It's even conceivable, in fact, that when you see a pronoun that's neuter, like if it's referring to a child, teknon is a neuter noun, and if that's the antecedent of the pronoun, you're using a neuter pronoun to refer to it. But you might refer to a child as he or she when you're translating that into English, if from the context you knew that the child was male or female. Of course, you might also refer to a child as it. Sometimes we do that, don't we? It's making a noise over there in the cot or whatever. But remember, the basic point, grammatical gender and biological gender are not the same thing. And I want to illustrate that for you just with the first of these examples up here. You see a similar construction to this. If you want to be brave and adventurous, take a look at Matthew 16:25, where you get an example that's similar to what I'll show you, where Jesus says, whoever would save his life must lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Well, the it there, which appears twice, refers back to life on both occasions, and life is feminine. And therefore, the pronoun that's used is autern, the feminine pronoun, but in English we translate it as it. Let me show you something similar here with a more simple sentence that uses only vocabulary that you're already familiar with. Let's look at this. Blepo ten thalasan, kai philo autern. Blepo ten thalasan, kai philo autern. So let's translate this briefly. First up, you know to look for the verbs first of all. So you come across, well, there's a first clause, there's a comma there just separating the two clauses. So that one's likely to have another verb in it. We'll get to that in a second. But here, what's the first verb? Well, that's blepo, nice and simple and deliberately so, meaning I see. It's not going to have a separately lexicalized subject, at least not at this stage in the course, because it's first person singular, not third person. So I see, that's the verb, you're not going to find a subject. Where's the object? You're looking for something in the accusative case. And here we are, we've got a noun and its article, the noun thalasan and its article ten thalasan in the accusative, making that the object. And you remember from the slight variations in the feminine forms from an earlier video, thalassa is one of those mixed feminine nouns which declines thalassa, thalassan, thalasses, thalasser. So it starts with the a endings and then it goes to the air endings. And the ten thalassan means the sea. So I see the sea, or perhaps the lake. Again, context would determine whether it was the lake or the sea that was being spoken of. I see the lake or the sea. Let's leave it as lake, actually, because then we're not going to get confused with that sea, are we? I see the lake, kai, and, well, you can have that up front, but we want to discipline ourselves and find the next verb. Philo, again, very straightforward, from phileo, meaning I love, but the weak epsilon is happy to disappear on this occasion because it's combining with a long vowel, the O in the first person singular ending. So I see the lake and I love. There's the subject, you've got the verb, there's no separate lexicalized subject. Where's the object? You're looking for something in the accusative case. Now here's where we get to the point of this exercise, the very last word, autern. Now look at your table on page 39, try and find autern for me. You will see that is the feminine, singular, accusative, third person pronoun, autern. It goes auter, autern. So this is the object of the verb, and what Duff has given you as a first kind of gloss translating this word, of course, is her. But in English, we're not going to translate this as her, are we? Because it refers back to the lake. So can you see what we're illustrating here? The point is that grammatical gender, feminine, does not correspond to biological gender. And in English, in the case of this sentence, the translation that we're going to use is dictated by what makes sense in English, which will be the biological gender, so to speak, and lakes don't have biology in quite that way, but we refer to lakes not as he or she, but as it. Do you see the point? The point is that biological gender, how we think about things, and grammatical gender, how we label things, don't coincide. So in short, when you see a pronoun like this, which is feminine, you should be thinking, well, it means she or possibly it. Same as if you'd seen a masculine pronoun like auton or auto. You should be thinking it's him or possibly it, or to him or possibly to it, and only decide which of those it is when you've got the rest of the sentence and you can see what this refers back to. So that's the point just to bear in mind about how to handle gender with the pronoun. One final thought, and this is worth spending a moment on as well. The particular case that is used to represent possession or ownership of something in Greek, as in many languages, is the genitive case, which normally you translate of a thing. And that's the best way to think about possession, because it helps you to translate the phrase in Greek into English most straightforwardly. And Duff has a note about this on page 40. I encourage you to read that. It's the first full bullet point. When the genitive of autos is used to express possession, his, her, its, their, the definite article is used with the noun as well as the genitive of autos. Well, that sounds like a bit confusing up front, but here's the way to think about it, and Duff gives you an explanation of this. Think of his word, in this example, as the word of him. The word of him. Don't try and translate something like this by leaping straight in and trying to translate this phrase. In other words, he is throwing her bread or their bread, and try and translate this. Turn this phrase, her bread or their bread, into the bread of her and the bread of them. And when you've done that, you'll be able to translate it more straightforwardly. Let me show you exactly what I mean, and we'll translate this sentence from English into Greek. Going from English into Greek is always tougher because it requires you to have a more clear understanding of the language that you're moving into, and therefore that'll be a challenge for us. So he is throwing, that's fairly simple. Ballo is the verb I throw, but we want he is throwing, so that's third person singular, so ballo, ballais, ballet. There we are, that's all straightforward. Ballo, ballais, ballet. Her bread. We'll do her bread first, we'll do their bread in a moment. So let's gloss that as the bread of her, and we translate this in two parts. The bread, it wants to be the object of the verb, so it's accusative. Bread is artos, so it's artos, arton. We want the bread, so it's ho, ton. So it's ton, arton. Ton. Don't forget the smooth breathing. Ton, arton. He is throwing, that's a mistake to avoid, making your news look like upsilons. There we are. He is throwing the bread, and now and only now do we put the possessive pronoun in. Of her, genitive singular, feminine, auter, autern, auters. He is throwing the bread of her. And now, therefore, you can see very easily how would we translate the sentence in this form. He is throwing not her bread, but their bread. By the way, this is not very nice, is it? This is some bloke who's got somebody's bread roll and is throwing it around the room. I don't like the sound of that, but it's all I could think of as an example. So he is throwing their bread. Well, it's very straightforward. He is throwing the bread, but instead of saying of her, feminine, genitive, singular, we want of them, which is going to be genitive plural. And it turns out, and you know this very well because you can see the endings, that the masculine, neuter, and feminine genitive plurals are all the same ending. It's the own ending. So there you are. Ballet, ton, arton, auton. He is throwing the bread of them. Of course, the sharp-eyed among you would have noticed that ballet could just as easily be she is throwing or it is throwing, because remember, we've got to remain flexible in our understanding of what the verbs mean and keep the various options in mind. But because we're translating he is throwing, then ballet is the right way to do it. Okay, well done for working your way through that with me. I want to encourage you, keep going, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. If you've let it drop for 2 or 3 days, then get straight back into it today. Give it 20 minutes with the books, learn some vocab, do a couple of exercises. You've got some great exercises there on page 40, practice 3.6. And I'll go through 1 or 2 of those with you in the next video. Until then, keep going, keep working hard. God bless you. Any comments and questions below, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.